Oh, Lenin. A so influential figure in the history of socialism, in this case Marxism. And when people who are Marxist critical of anarchists or Trotskyists or console communists or anybody who is not Marxist Leninist will always point as left wing communists and infantile disorder as like the ultimate gotcha, so to speak, of take that non Marxist Leninists, despite the Russian Revolution was a failure by all accounts. We're going to ignore the fact that Lenin used anarchist ideas to gain following for the Bolshevik party. Like even his opponent claimed that he was sitting the throne of Bakunin because he promoted in his book State of Revolution, he promoted the abolition of the parliament, the abolition of bureaucracy, election of all officials, the abolition of the standing army, creation of working bodies, and establish a semi-state. All these, with the exception of the semi-state, are anarchist ideas who've been theorized as far back at the 1860s and claimed to be his own, like mandate delegates from workplace, federate into workers' council, popular militias to defend a revolution. But instead, only 2 months after the Bolshevik took control in the Russian Revolution, they did the complete opposite. The complete opposite, proving the anarchists that hierarchy should be abolished because no matter how revolutionary you are, it becomes counter-revolutionary. Even though in State of Revolution, Lenin just straight up said abolish the state. Hell, even Lenin admitted that the dictatorship of the proletarian is actually a dictatorship over proletarian, which is what Bakunin was arguing. When Lenin was in power, they reintroduced wage labor, eliminate workers' control to one-man management based on the Henry Ford, and on Taylorism, rejected workers' decision-making in a democracy. Only a small few at any group questioning them was met with violence. Or people who argue for free Soviet elections, the Bolsheviks just killed them. Or instead of using socialization on the workers' self-management, it was state-owned, which Frank Engels himself has said in Socialism Utopia Scientific, the state ownership of means of the production is not the solution. As Iain McKay has pointed out, that in the other forms of workers' organization were also destroyed. For example, in Lenin's 1920 work Left-Wing Communism, Lenin pointed to a non-party workers' and peasant conference and Soviet Congress as means by which the party rescued its rule. Yet if the congresses of Soviet were democratic institutions, the like of which even the best democratic republics of the bourgeois had never known, the Bolsheviks, who had no need to support development and extended non-party conferences, to be able to observe the temper of the masses come closer to them, meet the requirement, promote the best among them to stay post. How the Bolsheviks met their requirement is extremely significant. They disbanded them, just they have with Soviets with non-Bolshevik majorities in 1918. This was because during the disturbance of late 1920, they provide an effective platform for criticism of Bolshevik policy. Their frequency was decreased and they were discontinued soon afterward. Look at a sample of the picture I have behind me, the Kronstadt Revolution, the last time there was an attempted anarchist revolution and anarchist society in Russia. Events of March of 1921 confirmed this position for the party's firm decision to retain power by all possible means, which are the Bolsheviks. And it's the greatest lesson of the Kronstadt event, the international lesson. It is our discussion with the section of communists in Germany who wish to oppose the Russian dictatorship, the dictatorship of the Communist Party, also discussed in Lenin's left-wing communism and infantile disorder, on the problem of the relationship between the Communist Party and the mass of the proletariat and the form of dictatorship of the party or the dictatorship of the class. Radek, who just repeating Bolshevik as the slander, basically speaking, they repeated this Bolshevik position with more than usual clarity and provisionally, unsurprisingly, came to the measure in decades. It was only after the mass revolts that we see in 1989. And a revolution should be a people doing the revolution, not a select few. But Lenin thought otherwise, because for him, who exercised the revolutionary coercion? The majority? No, it was the vanguard. Again, in left-wing communism and infantile disorder, as Lenin argued, the correct understanding of communism lies in correctly countering the condition. At the moment when the vanguard of the proletariat can successfully seize power, wherever during and after the seizure of power, to take support from sufficient broad strata of the working class and of the non-proletariatory masses, and when thereafter will be able to maintain conciliation and standards through educating, training, and attracting ever broader masses of the toiler. He strived to go so far as to draw a contrast in general between the dictatorship of the masses and the dictatorship of the leader is ridiculously absurd and stupid. In other words, if leaders exercise their dictatorship, then so did the masses. Such a position is pure and utter nonsense. If the party leaders govern, then the masses do not, and so the worker state is a state in the normal sense of the word, with a minority suppressing the majority. Thus the party, a minority, holds power and uses that power against the masses themselves. Little wonder what gave that once in power, the Bolsheviks quickly forgot their arguments in favor of representative democracy and argued for party dictatorship. In fact, Enrico Malatesta has predicted such scenario, and I quote from the book Anarchy, It is not true that once the social conditions are changed, the nature and role of government will change. Organ and function are in separate terms. Take away from an organ, if there is function, either the organ dies or the function is re-established. A government that is a group of people entrusted with making laws and empowered to use of the collective power to oblige each individual to obtain them is already a privileged class cut off from the people, as any constituted body would do. It is distinctly seek to extend its power to be beyond public control, to impose its own policy as to give priority to its special interests. Having been put into a privileged position, the government is already at odds with the people whose strength it deposes of. And even the Bolsheviks themselves had noticed the problem that Lenin's ideas. One the Bolshevik called Osinski said that his 6 weeks in the province had taught him that the center must rely on strong regional and provincial councils, since they were more capable than was the center of managing the nationalized sector. Again, going against Lenin. But because he believed in nationalization, it should be socialization. As Emma Gomez said, only free initiative and popular participation in the affairs of the revolution can prevent the terrible plunder committed in Russia. For instance, with few only 100 versts about 66 miles from Petrograd, there would have been no necessary for that city to suffer from cold had the workers' economic organization of Petrograd had been free to exercise their initiative for the common good. The peasants of the Ukraine would not have been hampered in the cultivation of their land had they had access to foreign implements stacked up in the warehouse of Kharkov, and on the industrial centers waiting orders from Moscow for their distribution. Those are characteristics of Bolshevik governmentalism and centralization, which should serve as a warning for the workers of Europe and the America of the destruction effects of statism. And despite Lenin trying to be a materialist analysis, he forgot to reject materialism because his approach was most of the revolutionary movements in advanced capitalist countries were not mainly Marxists but anarchists, were explicitly anti-parliamentary, direct actionists, decentralized federalists influenced by libertarian ideas, unlike what Lenin and Trotsky and Stalin and later Mao would want to argue. In fact, Lenin go far as argued that by the power parties of global revolution, the Bolsheviks had by state explicitly argued for party dictatorship and considered a truism that the whole proletariat could not rule, nor could the proletariat dictatorship be exercised by a mass working class organization. Therefore, rather than seeing revolution being based upon the empowerment of working class organizations and the social society being based of this, Lenin and his followers argue organization purely in instrumental terms. Simply, Leninism confused the party power with workers' power. For example, his confusion can be found in most Leninist works. For example, John Rhee argued that the essence of the Bolshevik strategy was to take power from the provisional government and put in the hands of popular organs of working class power, a point later made explicitly by Trotsky in his Lessons of October. But in reality, Lenin has always been clear the essence of Bolshevik strategy was taking of power by the Bolshevik Party itself. He explicitly argued this in 1917, considering the Soviets the best means of achieving this. He constantly equated Bolshevik rule with working class rule. Once in power, this identification did not change as much rather than argue for power to be placed into the hands of popular organ. In fact, when Lenin wrote Left-Wing Communism and Disorder, this pamphlet, he used the experience of the Bolshevik in this Tsarist period of Russia to combat the conclusion drawn by socialists in advanced capitalist countries with sizable social democratic parties. Lenin's argument for revolutionary parliamentarism did not convince the anti-parliamentarists, who argued that its significance lies not in its content but in the person of the author, for the argument are scarcely original and for the most part already been used by others. Their fallacy resides in many of the equation of the conditions parties at the organization and parliamentary practice of Western Europe with their Russian counterpart. This was written by Anton Panenkovic, and in his writing, Panenkovic and the Gorgeous Marxism. While anarchists would disagree with the underlying assumption that Marx was right and considered the parliamentarism as essential, it only became problematic later. We will agree wholeheartedly at the critique presented. In fact, I think the best repudial of Lenin's left-wing communist infidel exposure was by Herman and his work Open Letter to Comrade Lenin. This was written somewhere in March to June in 1921. And I read, Introduction. Comrade Lenin, I have read your approaches on radicalism in the communist movement. He has taught me a great deal all your writings have done. For this I feel grateful to you, and doubtless many other comrades feel as I do. Many are trace and many are germ of this infantile disease to which without doubt I am also a victim. Has been chased away by your brochure, or will yet be eradicated by it. Your observation about the confusion that revolution has caused in many brains is quite right true. I know that revolution came too suddenly and in a way so utterly different from what we expect. Your words will be an incentive to me, once again and to even a greater extent than before, to base my judgment in all matters of tactics, also in the revolution, exclusively on reality of the actual class relation that they manifest themselves politically and economically. After having read your portrait, I thought that this is right. But after having considered for a long time whether I will seek to uphold this left wing into the right article of the KAPD and the opposition party in England, I had to decline. The basic mistakes. This seems contradiction. It is true though to the fact that the starting point, the portrait is not right to my idea. You are mistaken in your judgment regarding the analogy of West European Revolution with the Russian one. Regarding the conditions of the West European Revolution, that is to say class relations, and this led you to mistake the cause from which this left wing, the opposition, originated. Therefore, the brochure seems to be right as long as your starting point is assumed. If, however, as it should be, your starting point is rejected, the entire brochure is wrong, as you are mistaken and partly mistaken. Judgment convert in your condemnation of the left movement, especially in Germany and England, if I fully intend to defend those of the left wing. Although if the leaders know I do not agree with them on all points, I imagine I had the best answer your brochure by a defense of the left wing. This will enable me not only to point out its origin, the cause from which it springs, and to prove its rights, and to merit the present stage, and here in Western Europe, but also which is the equally important to combat the mistaken conception that are prevalent in Russia with regard to the West European Revolution. Both these points are important, and it is on the conception of the West European Revolution that the West European as well as the Russian tactics depend. I shall have like to this and to Moscow Congress, which however I was not able to attend. Two arguments refuted. In the first place, I must refute two of your arguments that may mislead the judgment of the comrades or readers. You scoff and sneer at the ridiculous and childish notion of the struggle in Germany, and the dictatorship of the leaders or the masses, and from above or below, etc. We quite agree with you that these should be no question at all, but we do not agree with you scoffing, for that is the pity of it. In Western Europe there are still questions. In Western Europe we still have in many countries leaders of the type of the Second International. Here we are still seeking the right leader, those that do not try to dominate the masses. They do not betray them. As long as do not find these leaders, we want to do all things from below and from the dictatorship of the masses themselves. If I have a mountain guy and he should lead me into the abyss, I prefer to do without him. As soon as we have found the right guys, we will start this searching that mass and leader will be really one. This and nothing else is that what German English left wing, what we ourselves mean by these words. In the same whole school for use section remark, the leader should form one united whole above class and mass. We quite agree with you, but the question is to find and rear leaders that are really one with the masses. This can only be accomplished by the mass, the political parties, and the trade unions, by means of the most severe struggle as inwardly, and the same holds good for iron discipline and a strong centralization. We want them all right, but not until we have the right leaders. This reserve all struggle, which is now being fought monstrously in Germany and England, the two countries where communism is nearest to its realization, can only be harmed by your scoffing. Your attitude ponders by the opportunist element on the Third International. By this scoffing, you append the opportunist element on the Third International. For it's one of means of which elements in the Spartacus League and in the BSB, and also in the Communist Party and many other countries, impose upon the workers when they say that the entire question of masses and leaders is absurd, is nonsense and childish. Through this phrase they avoid and wish to avoid all criticism of themselves, the leaders. It is by means of this phrase of an iron discipline centralization that they crush the opposition, and this opportunism is battered by you. You should not do this, comrade. We are only in the introductory stage yet. Here in Western Europe and in that stage it's better to encourage the fighters than the rulers. I already touched on this quite preferentially here. In the course of this writing I will deal with this matter more in length. There is a deeper reason yet why I cannot agree with you, Porcher. It is the following. I'm going to skip the majority of the text because it's a little long, but to make it the summary conclusion, it's the left winger to free workers' minds. The left wing chooses tactics such a way that in the first place the mind of the worker is liberated, as the Third International does not found its tactics on freeing the mind, nor the unity of all bourgeois and petty bourgeois parties, but the compromise and rifts. It leaves the old trade unions intact, trying to unite them with the Third International. As the left wing strives above all for freeing the mind and the believes in the unity of the bourgeois party, it realized that the trade union must be destroyed and the proletariat needs better weapons. The same motives induced the Third International to support parliamentarism. The same motive also induced left wing to abolish parliamentarism. The Third International leads to the condition of slavery such as it was in the second. Left wing wishes to change it from below upward. It sees the evil at its root. As the Third International does not believe that in its first place the liberation of mind is needed in Western Europe, nor that all bourgeois parties will be one in the revolution, it collapsed masses around it without inquiring whether they are really communists, without determining its tactics, and to position what they are as long against the masses. Left wing wishes in all countries to form parties consistently exclusively of communists and determine its tactics accordingly. Throughout the example of these originally small parties, the majority of the proletariat and therefore the masses will be brought to communism. The Third International, then, the masses in Western Europe are a means. To the left wing, they are the aim. Throughout these tactics, which are quite right in Russia, the Third International employs leader politics. The left wing, on the other hand, employs mass politics. Throughout these tactics, the Third International is leading not only the Western Europe but also the Russian Revolution into ruin. The left wing, on the other hand, does this tactic lead to world proletarian towards victory. And finally, I will gather my statement into the few theses so that the worker who must strive for themselves to gain a clear insight into those tactics may be them before their eyes in the concise servile form. They had to be read, of course, in the light of the above opposition. 1. The tactics of the Western European Revolution must be different from those of the Russian Revolution. 2. From here the proletariat stands alone. 3. Here the proletariat must make the revolution all by itself against all other classes. 4. The importance of the proletariat masses therefore is rather greater than that of the leaders smaller than Russia. 5. Consequently, here the proletariat must have the very best weapons for the revolution. 6. The trade union being insufficient weapon, they must be replaced or changed into industrial organization that are united into one league. And 7. As the proletariat must make the revolution all alone without help, it has to rise very high morally as well as spiritually. It is better therefore not to use parliamentarism in the revolution. Marx had learned from the Paris Commune the proletariat cannot use or take over the bourgeois. State for the revolution, thus the left wing has learned from the Russia, German, Hungarian from the World Revolution. The proletariat cannot use the old Socialist Party nor the old trade union for the world revolution. with fraternal greetings, Corte.